One of the biggest lies of religion is that we are fundamentally separated from God, and therefore something has to happen in order for us to be reconciled to God, or in relationship with God, or in union with God, or in right standing with God. Whatever it is, there's something has to happen in order for that gap between God and us to be merged. And depending on which religion or tradition or belief structure you're adhering to, there's going to be different conditions and ideas around this. And one of the things that really started to bother me when I was a part of my previous spiritual tradition was this whole notion of our way is the right way. We have the one and only path to God, and if you don't convert and join our religion and join our belief structure, then you can't merge yourself back to God. You can't be reconciled. You can't be forgiven. You can't be saved, etc. Again, all these different unique and specific conditions depending on which religion, which tradition, which belief structure we're talking about. Now, I grew up as a Christian fundamentalist, and so that was from that approach. But like I've talked about in other videos, just about every religion has two main approaches. There's the fundamentalist approach, and then there's the mystical approach. And the way it typically goes is with the fundamentalist approach in these different religions, there's this conception of we've got the one and only solution to get you back to God, to get you saved, to get you forgiven, whatever it is. Follow our path, follow our way, and believe what we tell you to believe in. That's typically how the fundamentalist path or approach works in all these different religions. And so, like I said, I grew up in Christianity as a Christian fundamentalist, and the belief was that Jesus is the only way, the one and only way to God. And the reason we believe this is because our book says it. So Jesus apparently said it in the book that we believe in. And so therefore, everyone has to go through Jesus. And so what I would do as a Christian fundamentalist, especially when I was evangelizing, was I would view the world, I would view every single person through the lens of my own religion, through the lens of my own preconceived notions of what I thought the scriptures were saying, what I thought Jesus was saying, and that's how I would evangelize. But with the mystical approach in these different religions, it's not so much this strict belief of we have the one and only way and you have to believe in this and confess exactly how we tell you to confess, and there's this very specific salvific formula. No, in the mystical approach, it's not so much of that. It's more of there actually is no way. There is no path to God. Why? Because separation is an illusion. And here's the key. Here's the most important aspect of what I'm talking about today. If separation is an illusion, then the question is there actually a path to God? And what I discovered, what I realized in my own spiritual journey after I left Christian fundamentalism, was that through this mystical approach and through meditation and contemplative prayer, that I am not separated from God. This is something that is an illusion that's occurring in the mind, but in reality, there is no separation. Separation is an illusion. And what I realized in meditation, as I went beyond the ego, the analytical, intellectual thinking mind, was that there is something so much more to me than my body, than my mind, than my thoughts, and my feelings, than my emotions, and my beliefs, there's so much more to what I think about what it is and my preconceived notions and all my stuff. There is something beyond all that. And what I discovered through meditation was that the fundamental essence of my being is pure awareness, pure consciousness, spirit, whatever you want to call it. And that essentially is where the divine is within each and every one of us, within the depths of our being, beyond the thinking mind, beyond the ego, beyond all the different beliefs and different points of views and all these different things. Beyond all that, there's just pure consciousness. There's just pure being, pure awareness. And that is the presence of God. That is oneness with God. When you go and you experience that it's not even a state of consciousness. I always start to say it's a state of consciousness, but it's not a state of consciousness. It's pure consciousness itself. It's pure being itself. When I started meditating, what I realized through direct experience for the first time in my life was that I am fundamentally one with God, and that God is not a separate, distant deity out there somewhere, but actually God can be found within the depths of my being. And something that really inspired me was the poetry of Rumi, who was a Sufi mystic, and he would write a lot about this. He would talk about, he searched for God in a church building and over here and over there, but ultimately he found God within his own heart. And this was something that I was experiencing. And so when I left Christian fundamentalism, I went through one of the most challenging seasons of my life. And there were other things going on besides me walking away from my previous faith that caused that season of my life to be extremely challenging. But during that time, when I was walking away from the faith that I grew up with, and I was walking away from so many relationships in my spiritual community that I had built over the years, I knew deep in my bones that there was still something more to life, to existence, than just the material world. And so there was never really a point where I was doubting that. I always felt intuitively that there was spirit and that there was something beyond the five senses and the analytical thinking mind. And so during this time of my life, this is when I started to meditate. And what meditation showed me was that I had been searching and seeking for God, for fulfillment, for peace, for joy, for all these things externally, salvation, and it was all rooted in this belief, in this subconscious programming of I'm a sinner, I'm separate from God, and something has to happen in order for me to be one with God, in order for me to be reconciled with God. And so this was the fundamental root of it, was my belief and what I had been programmed to think. But when I moved past that, and when I started to go, so this is what happened. I went from believing in things and adhering to certain doctrines and dogmas and creeds to meditation, which brought me direct experience. And through direct experience came knowing. And this is something that the mystics talk a lot about, is through this direct path of experience, you come away with this experiential knowing. So it's not intellectual knowledge that you're attaining through some kind of mystical spiritual practice. No. What you're experiencing, what you're receiving in this mystical experience, in this mystical encounter, is experiential knowledge. And this is a knowledge that is so hard to describe because it's beyond the intellectual mind. It's beyond the analytical thinking mind. It's heart knowledge. It's the intuitive heart. And it's something that you just know deep in your bones, and it just resonates with your entire being. And this is exactly what I experienced. And so once I started to experience this, my life was profoundly transformed. And I started to see and experience the presence of God, not just within me, but within every single person I encountered. And then beyond that, in everything in nature and all around me. And the kingdom of heaven started to manifest itself in my external reality. Why? Because I had gone within and I had experienced it for myself directly within myself, and I was transformed from the inside out. That's what led me to seeing it and experiencing it in my outer world. But through all this, through the mystical approach, through meditation, what I realized was that separation is indeed an illusion. And if we have this mindset, if we are programmed to believe that separation is a reality and that we have to adhere to some kind of religious rules or dogma in order to be one with God, in order to be saved, in order to be forgiven, what happens with that is we get into this cycle of never being enough, and we think that we have to keep believing and we have to keep doing all these good works. We have to keep going to church. We have to keep praying. We have to behave holy all the time in order to please God. And so it's this very dualistic mindset of works-based performance, and God is judging me all the time, and so I have to do all these things correctly. And a lot of these things are, like I said, depending on which denomination or tradition or religion, there's different conditions, there's different commandments or rules or dogma that are involved, but ultimately it's the same paradigm. It's the same pattern. It's separation consciousness, and what's taught is you keep coming back to church, you keep tithing, then you're one of us, you're included, you're a true Christian, or you're a true whatever religion, whatever denomination, whatever tradition, if you do all these things. So again, it's conditional, and that's what it's all built around. But when you wake up, when you go through a spiritual awakening, what you realize is that God is not distant from you. God is not far from you. And God is not separate from you. And that's never been a reality. Separation is an illusion. The only separation that was occurring, and this wasn't even really separation, but it was just in your mind. It was a belief, but it was never true. So you were living kind of like in this nightmare, dream-like experience of separation. But the truth beyond that, this entire time, has always been oneness, has always been union. Divine union has always been what is. So what happens? Well, when we go beyond the mind, when we go beyond the ego, what we discover is union is reality. And there's nowhere we have to go. We can't get to God. We can't achieve God's presence. We can't earn God's presence. There's nothing you can do in order for God to be pleased and to know, because I did this today, and because I went to church, and because I prayed for this many hours, now I'm going to have more of God's favor, and God's presence is going to, come into this room and give me some kind of mystical experience. No, that's not how it works, because you're already there. Someone once said, I forget, but they said something like, you can't get there, you can only be there. And so what this essentially is, going from separation consciousness to unity consciousness, is going from this works-based mentality to rest, to grace, where we awaken to what is. We step away, we transcend the separation consciousness that is coming from the ego, that is being programmed, or maybe, we were programmed with this. Either we were born into it or we were persuaded into it, which is this lie of religion that says we're fundamentally separated from God. And so we go from that, and when we let go of that and we transcend it, and we step into grace, we step into rest, we step into the reality of what is, then that's when we experience God where we least would have expected, within the depths of our being. And so here's the thing. There is no path to God. And I know this is a big argument among the different religions and traditions and even denominations within those different religions, where it's like, who's got the one and only way, or our religion has the one and only way, or we've got the one and only path, and you've got to believe in this, and you've got to do this, and you've got to confess that. And there's all these different ideas of which path, which tradition, which belief structure has it all figured out. Who has the solution? Who has the answer? Well, here's the thing. If there's no separation to begin with, if separation is an illusion, then there is no solution. There is no, we've got the one and only way, because there is no way. You're already there. You can't get there. You can only be there because you are there. What has to happen is you just have to simply wake up. You have to realize it. You have to see it. And that is experience. That's accomplished, but I don't even like that word accomplish, but we could just say it for now, through meditation. Meditation is the method. It's not a path. It's not something that is getting you from A to B. It's just waking you up. It's a modality that is used for you to see that God has always been within the depths of your being, and that you are one with God, and that separation is indeed an illusion. So it's removing the veil of separation. When the veil is removed, then you see what is, and there's clarity. And like I said, there's this knowing that arises from direct experience. It's no longer about believing. Oh, who's got the right belief? Oh, if you believe this, then you're in. But if you don't believe in this, then you're out. And so we've got the believers and the unbelievers and the saved and the damned and the in-group and the out-group. No, in this level, in this realm, Everyone is included. Everyone is one with God. You are divine, and so is everyone else. And that's what meditation leads you to understand. But again, meditation is not getting you anywhere. It's simply waking you up to what is. Ram Dass said one time, he said, if you're already in Detroit, you don't need to take a bus to get there. So think about that for a second. You're already in the presence of God. God's presence is within you, and you are in God's presence, and that simply is what it is. And so you can't get into God's presence, and God's presence can't come from somewhere because God's presence is infinite. God's presence is all that is. It's Brahman. It's the Tao. It's everything and nothing. And so it's not like this area where we can say, okay, it's God's presence is only here, or God is just this, but God is not that. No, God is everything and nothing. That's what the mystics say. And so if God is infinite, if God is everything and nothing, that includes the depths of your being. That includes fundamentally what you are, the essence of who you are. Okay? And so if you're already in Detroit, you don't need a bus to get there. Wake up. That's what meditation is doing. Meditation is simply waking us up. And there's such a rest and a peace and a grace that comes with this, especially if you're someone like me who has spent many years in religion, on the treadmill of religion, trying to get to God, trying to get God's presence to come down from the heavens, and trying to worship for 10 hours and pray and fast and do all these things, and to live as holy as possible and do all these religious acts in order to get God's favor. If you're someone like me who lived like that for many years, this message, this realization is really going to liberate you. And I think the best way to describe it is simply it's going from fear to love. That's what it is, because separation is always connected to fear. As long as you're living from separation consciousness and you think that you have to believe a certain way or confess this or say this prayer in order for God, some deity out there, to approve of you, then you're going to be living in fear. You're going to be living in this state of uncertainty, and is this deity judging me? Because what if I'm not a part of the right religion, or what if I'm not a part of the right denomination, or what if I didn't apply the correct salvific formula? It's all these what ifs that start to arise. Anxiety and fear come from what? Come from separation consciousness. And separation consciousness comes from the ego. Now, the ego is not something that we're born with. The ego is something that is developed over time in the early years of life. And we can actually transcend the ego through meditation, because meditation reveals who we really are, what we really are, the true self. And when we wake up to the true self, then the ego kind of dissolves as the illusion that it is, because the ego is simply this false sense of self. And so by discovering who we really are and knowing who we really are, then this false sense of self starts to lose its power. And it will still try to, whisper things to us, and it will still come up with all the things that the ego comes up with. But the key is we won't be identifying with the ego anymore. And that is where true liberation lies. That's where we can sit back as the witness and detach from our thoughts, detach from the egoic mentality, and simply watch it, and then choose whether or not we're going to go down the path of fear or love. But anyways, this is something that I really felt led to talk about today, because I keep hearing this all the time, and this is something that I went through. Like I said, as a Christian fundamentalist, I was always trying to prove to all other people that didn't believe like me that my religion, my belief structure, my denomination, my belief of salvation was the one and only way. It was the only path to God, and that's why I spent so much time trying to convert as many people as possible to my belief structure, because I thought, hey, this is it. This is the only way. If they don't believe, if they don't confess, if they don't make Jesus Lord of their life, then they're going to hell forever. And I didn't want that. But then I started thinking, why would God create a reality in the first place where, okay, you're born, you live for however long you live, 70 to 80 years if you're lucky, And you've got that amount of time, which is a short amount of time compared to eternity. But you've got this amount of time, 70 to 80 years if you're lucky, to join the right religion or believe in the right thing. And if you don't figure it out, then you're separated from God forever. After you die, you go to hell. You don't get to go to heaven. And God is invisible, and God, sometimes appears to some people, but he doesn't appear to others. So that's even kind of confusing. But you're expected to figure it all out, to just be lucky. If you're born into the correct religion, then I guess you're really lucky. But what if you're not? And what if you're, born into a religion that is the complete opposite of what the path to God is complete opposite of the correct religion, and then you don't even know that religion exists, and then there's so many different factors that go into it that ultimately just lead to a lot of confusion. And these were questions that I started to ask, and I was really curious about when I was walking away from Christian fundamentalism, because it just didn't make sense. But again, this is the fundamentalist approach. If we go to the mystical approach, what we find is that there is no path. And it's not about trying to convert people to join a certain belief structure so that they can then be in the presence of God, or so that God can then forgive them or save them. No, it's simply about telling people, hey, you've got it within you. And if you go within, you can experience that. And it's inherent to your being. So it's free. It's not about, there's no conditions, and it's not something that a church can sell you. You already have it. It's just simply time to wake up to it. And once you wake up to it, then you see what actually is. And once you see, you can't unsee. And I'm telling you, this truth really is so liberating. I think it's the truth that makes you free that Jesus talked about. You will know the truth, and the truth will make you free. That's a knowing. It's not something that you just believe in or have faith in or hope for. No, it's a direct knowing. It's a direct experience. And there is no path with this. If you're already in Detroit, you don't need to take a bus to get there. You are there. Paul said in Acts, he said, in God we live and move and have our being. This is about being. It's not about doing. It's not about earning or attaining or achieving or searching or seeking or trying to make it all happen or trying to believe correctly and figure it all out. No, it's about realizing. It's about waking up to what has always been true. God is within the depths of your being. You are one with God. And when you see this, when you experience it, your life will never be the same. So that's it for today. If you found this video helpful, informative, or insightful, please leave a thumbs up at the bottom of the screen, and be sure to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And I'm really curious to hear what you think about this topic, kind of some of the things I said today. And also, if you're someone who has had some kind of a mystical experience where you've seen this transformation in your own life, where you went from believing in a deity to directly experiencing God as pure consciousness, as source consciousness, as infinite being, whatever you want to call it, and you've experienced what I'm talking about today, what I've experienced, I would love to hear about that. So please leave your stories in the comment section below. Also, if you have any questions, I love answering as many questions as I can if you're open-minded and you want to learn more. So please leave all of that in the comment section below. Okay? So thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.